What's up, guys? JJCCubes42 here with another Redstone creation. What I have for you today is a programmable, order-sensitive, 4-digit passcode lock. Alright, so a little bit about this thing. I initially built a non-programmable version of this, but decided that having had a long time without really a good Redstone project, I would just take on the added challenge of making it programmable, which proved to be quite the task. Um, Originally, this circuit wouldn't have been much larger than these blue blocks of wool, which are just a few simple NOR latches chained together. And the, you know, the this side would have been connected to whichever button you wanted, and you just put a sign next to it that had a number on it, and it was pretty much arbitrary. And all the other buttons were hooked up to make it, shut off if it wasn't the right one or whatever. But as you can see, it becomes a lot more complicated when you want to have it programmable to have any code that you want. You can change it at any time. So the main components of this thing are, you have the button board, which was actually a little bit more difficult to build than you might think, because it needs to be compact and it needs to have a signal that gets sent to a lot of different places anytime you press any of the buttons, while also delivering an individual signal to its corresponding, you know, decimal to binary decoder, where the numbers are decoded into binary, and if the programming mode is on, they'll be sent to these rails, where they are put into the memory based on a system that toggles these bars, and whichever one doesn't have the bars on it, these are the 4 bits of the signal, um, can be written to. And that just goes, based on when you press the button, then it'll go to the next one and right to the next one. And it's not actually that simple, but for all practical purposes, it is. And then those values, those values go to these XOR gates, which compare the ones that compare the written values to the values that you put in. Um, there's no like throttling system. They go through to the gates every time you press a button, the signals, but they won't do anything if you're programming it, because there's no correct value. There's nothing to be compared, so it doesn't matter. And zero's not an option on the board. Big that's a big I don't know what you would say, oversight of this whole project, is that there's no zero. Um, it's really, really hard to make zero a thing when zero doesn't do anything inherently, because it's a dead signal. And you could argue, oh, why don't you just invert it? But it's not really that simple. Or at least not to my knowledge. Maybe I'm just not understanding something, but it would have made it a lot more complicated, let's just say. But yeah, these XOR gates that I can't think of the username right now, but I'll definitely mention him in the comments. Ooh, crap. I guess I'll just put that there. Anyways, I had to look up a really thin design for an XOR gate, because initially I had a system for decoding that was completely wrong. I thought it would fit in this tiny space, but it ended up being wrong, and I'm like, wow, how am I gonna get, like, whatever, 16, how many of these are there? Probably 16 XOR gates in this small of a spot. Well, I had to blow up the distance between the signals to 2 each, which really wasn't fun. That actually sucked a lot. That was probably the suckiest part of this project, was trying to reroute these signals to have 2 spaces in between them. And even so, I barely figured out a way to connect them without having them interact with one another, because this signal right here actually goes to this XOR gate, and this one plugs into this guy through here, and the other input is back here. And then, you have them all tied together with a torch, and if they're all correct, then it gives you a signal that goes over to these latches, um, which can only go through if it's the first one. This keeps track of which digit you're on, so you don't get say if you had 5555 put in and you pressed 5, it would actually jump like 1 or 2 down, and you don't want that to happen. So, but if you enter the wrong number, this whole thing is meant to tell whether or not you're right or wrong, and it tells the system to reset the NOR latches on any button press. And what happens basically is if you're correct, you get a signal that comes over to this gate and will block it. This is the signal saying that you're correct, which would block this signal from resetting. This is the reset signal that comes from any button press. So resetting is a default. If you're correct, you will not be able to reset because this signal will jam it. And there's the resets right there. Okay, so I think I've done enough talking. Let me actually show you that this thing does work. So right now, the code that I have written to it is 7891, I believe. And I'll just quickly demonstrate putting in that code. It needs to happen slowly because of how much there's going on in the circuit. If you press the buttons too quick, they'll just interfere with one another and it won't work. Okay, so there's the door opening. You press any wrong button and it'll shut itself in a couple seconds. Okay. And just to kind of show you what's going on, I'll put a couple correct digits in and then zoom over to the logic gates. Okay, so 789. You see the first 3 have been flipped. The last one is still awaiting its trigger. And this index is now, I guess, paying attention to these guys, these XOR gates or comparators as you might want to call them. And when I press it, it'll go through, but if I press the wrong button, this counter will have to jog it back to 1, resetting it back to the default state, saying that you had no correct digits. So that one will go up, and a bunch of other stuff happens too, but it's not important. So I guess I'll just press a wrong button and fly over there. You can see it has reset itself to having this open, and all these are flipped back to the default state. Now I will show you programming it to a different code. First, you want to enter the correct code so that you can access the button, because that would be silly to have access to the button possible without having to enter the correct code. I did it too fast. There we go. Yeah, that's the only other problem with this thing is there's no way around it, at least that I know of. It's having to put in the values really slow. Okay, so let's come up with a code that we want. I guess we could go 2468. 2, 4, and you see the door has shut now that it knows that we have a different code, and it's no longer I don't know how to say it. Alright, so those pistons going down shows us that programming mode has turned itself off. And we will go check these values to make sure that they're written properly. have a 2, a 4, 6, and an 8. Excellent. So now I will demonstrate that the door will only open on 2, 4, 6, 8. That might have been too fast. Yep, that's unfortunate. Hmm, how about that? What's going on here? Try it one more time. 2, 4, 6, 8. Ah, there we go. Yeah, I'm not sure why that was bugging out like that. Like I said, this thing's not bug proof yet. There's still some flaws with it, I guess, that need to be worked out, that I will discover as time goes on, because there's a hell of a lot of different cases that you can encounter when you have a 4-digit code that could be anything. How I tested it was just going 1111 2222, and I set it up with all those just to make sure that all the values being written from different places, because when you have the numbers decoded, the signal length will vary based on where it's coming from. Like if you had this one active and it was like a 1, that signal would reach, but you don't know if these ones would reach necessarily. Probably one of the other bigger challenges of this project was, shut this door real quick, the programming mode. Just getting it to write the values to the memory in the correct order every way, or just so every time. And because they share a common rail, they need to be cleared every time. Because when I press 4 to write the first digit, 4 gets written to this one, but it also gets written to all the others because it has a common, whatever you want to call it, rail, as I like to say. And so it has to clear, write, and then jump to the next one. And coordinating all that activity and getting the conditions just right to be able to toggle the mode on and off, is how do you know when programming mode is over? Well, you might say when the decoder is decoding 4, that way you know you've written to the 4th cell, but that doesn't cut it. So the condition actually ends up being, if there is a value written here and the decoder is showing 0, then that must mean that programming mode is off, and it should shut itself off. The reasoning behind that, I know that's not really like a good explanation, but that's basically the logic behind it. Well, I think that's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed my creation. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for some similar projects in the future. Hopefully I'll be able to have some good ideas on what to do next. Thanks for watching.